I'm Officer Cadet Martinez Chung, and in this lesson we're going to learn about stability. So what stability is the tendency for an airplane that's in flight to maintain straight, level, upright flight. And if it's moved or displaced, then it will be able to return to its original position without any corrective action by the pilot. So first off, we have what we call static stability. So static stability is the initial tendency of an airplane when disturbed to return to its original position. So let's say we enter a bank, then the aircraft will have a tendency to kind of want to level out. That initial tendency is what we call static stability, as opposed to dynamic stability. So this is the overall tendency of the aircraft to return to its original position. It's usually a series of damped out oscillations. So what happens is, as the aircraft, let's say, rolls, then it starts to go back, it might overcorrect a little bit, and then it overcorrects again, but then eventually it starts to kind of like wobble its way into straight and level position. Just like so. Alright, so stability may be either positive, meaning the airplane will develop forces or moments that will tend to restore it to its original position. So think of a ball inside of a bowl, for example. Alright, so let's say we move the ball up the bowl, and then if we let go of it, the ball will tend to return to its original position. That would be positive stability. Next up is neutral. So in this case, there are no restoring forces. So when disturbed, the aircraft will just stay there. It will not move further away or return to its original position. In this case, think of a ball on a flat surface. So let's say you add a force to the ball, you push it a little bit, eventually it'll stop and it will just stay there. It won't go any further and it will not return back to where it started. Finally, we have negative stability. So in this case, the forces actually tend to make the aircraft move further away or aggravate, in a sense, the movement. So this is known also as instability. So in this case, think of a ball on top of a hill. Okay? Let's say you push the ball down, then the ball will just keep going down the hill. It will just keep going and going and going until the end of the hill. But it will not return to its original position, nor stay somewhere in the middle of the hill. It will just keep going. So this is usually what you want, for example, in fighter jets. Since you need to be really fast and really agile in dogfights, that negative stability can actually help you go into those very quick and snappy rolls or pitches. Alright, now we're going to move on to longitudinal stability. So what longitudinal stability is pitch stability, or stability of the longitudinal axis or around the lateral axis, if you remember this from the previous lesson. So in this instance, we're just going to call it longitudinal stability will equal stability of the longitudinal axis. So there are a few factors that can influence longitudinal stability. First is the horizontal stabilizer. So let's say we have a disturbance and that increases the angle of attack on the wings. So the nose will go up and the tail will go down, so we will pitch up. So think of it kind of like an updraft. It's pushing us under the airplane, kind of pushing us upwards. Okay? So now, as the horizontal stabilizer moves down, then that actually increases its angle of attack. And therefore, it will obtain more lift and will restore the aircraft to its level altitude again. So when we pitch up, remember, the horizontal stabilizer will have a higher angle of attack and will generate much more lift. And the lifting force on the tail will lift the tail back up and bring us back to level flight. Next is the center of gravity. So this is really very important when it comes to longitudinal stability. So where the center of gravity is located, so whether forward or aft, and which can be changed by the way the aircraft is loaded, can really affect how the airplane behaves. So let's say for example we have a COG that's really far aft, so really back. Then in that case, remember we have an aerodynamic couple. So the aircraft will have a tendency to pitch up because the center of gravity is all the way back and the center of lift or center of pressure tends to be more forward than it. And we will have a pitching up motion. And vice versa, if the center of gravity is really forward relative to the center of lift, then the aircraft will have a nose down tendency because a couple is created and the center of gravity is closer to the nose than the lift created by the wings. So essentially, we're kind of shifting back and forth between a center of gravity really back, so thereby making the airplane tail heavy, or a center of gravity really forward, thereby making the aircraft nose heavy. Yeah. So this can cause a lot of instability or cut. Alright, next we have lateral stability. So lateral stability is stability around the longitudinal axis or stability of the lateral axis. In this case, roll stability. So lateral stability can be achieved different ways. First off, we have what's known as dihedral. So in a dihedral, the wings are actually a little bit angled upwards when looked at it from the front. So what this does is whenever a wing is displaced, so we start a roll, then the lower wing will start to create a little bit more lift, so we'll have a higher angle of attack. And that extra lift that the lower wing creates will be the restoring force that brings us back to straight and level. Next is what we call the keel effect. If any of you guys are sailors in any way or know about boats, this is literally the exact same thing. So what the keel effect is, it happens first of all on high wing aircraft. So remember, high wing meaning the wings are above the fuselage. In that case, and when we're disturbed, let's say we roll to the right, then the weight of the fuselage that's below the wing will actually act like a pendulum and kind of swing us back to level. Alright, next up we have sweep back. So what sweep back is if we look at the airplane from the top, then the wings are kind of swept back, kind of like a Naruto run. So what that does is it kind of acts like a dihedral, just the effect is not as pronounced. So whenever a wing is dropped, then the dropped wing will start to generate more lift than the rising wing, and that will kind of level us out. It also helps with our yaw stability. So whenever we have a yaw in one direction, then the forward wing, due to the yaw, will create more drag than the rearward wing, and that will kind of fix us into place. Directional stability. So directional stability is stability around the vertical or the normal axis, and also known as yaw stability. So this feature affects the directional stability is cut. 3, 2, 1, mark. So the most important feature that affects directional stability is the vertical tail surface, so the fin and the rudder. So the vertical stabilizer or fin. So when it comes to yaw stability, then the airplane always has a tendency to fly head-on to the relative wind. So if we have a crosswind, for example, then the aircraft want to turn in the direction of the wind. This is because of the surface area of the vertical tail surface. So whenever we have airflow coming from the side, it is exposed to a lot more surface area from the tail than the rest of the aircraft, which will push the tail and swing into the wind. Similarly, when we're up in the air, we have airflow coming in. Let's say if we yaw dramatically to the left, then we're exposing that relative airflow to a lot more tail surface area, which will create more drag in the tail and push the tail back into place, essentially. So here's a little handy chart in order to remember all the axes, the motions, what control surface they control, and their stability. Alright, and that is all. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, queries, or random outbursts, feel free to put them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and happy landings!